talk down.
Andres, the last time we were here,
Yes,
you were dressed up as a Christmas dragon.
I was, and you were dressed up as a chicken.
A Christmas chicken.
I was a Christmas chicken?
It was, yeah. It was our holiday special podcast.
Right, but what was Christmassy about it?
What was Christmassy about your dragon costume?
Nothing.
Well, it was green.
It was green.
It's a Christmas color. My Christmas chickens are traditionally eaten on Christmas.
That's good.
Yeah. So we are back here today
Yeah.
to have another Sanctuary podcast.
Yeah, dude, it's been so long.
It's been months.
Seriously. But I'm happy we're back.
Me too.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Sure, go for it.
So you were talking yesterday. What was your friend's name? From the story you were telling at the beginning. Steve?
Steve, yeah.
Steve. So you said that you didn't explain the story of the first time that you guys ran into high schoolers. What happened?
No, it wasn't that we ran into high schoolers. We had gotten in a sort of group fight situation in the past.
Oh, so it was a group fight. I thought it was you guys ran into another group of high schoolers in the past.
No.
So what happened the first time?
So the first time we were at Lake Champion for a winter retreat.
Oh.
Yeah, and I don't remember how this started, but this crazy like snowball fight started between the whole building we were in and the building next to us. So there was like, I don't know, 100 kids having a snowball fight.
Okay.
And then some kids got really mad that we were hitting them with snowballs, and they all decided to start trying to like fight our group of friends.
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
How did it end? Were you victorious?
How did it end? I remember I picked my cousin up like off the ground and it was like dragging him away. And my friend Steve was like, was somehow like scaring a group of kids off. I guess he looked really threatening. That was how it ended. We just kind of, Steve and I ended the fight.
Wow.
That was it.
And so you're not one to start a fight, but you'll end it.
No, I told you yesterday, I'm not tough. I've tried a couple times to be tough and it just doesn't work out for me. I'm like, because like, I can't help but like smile like a friend.
Right. You are very smiley.
I am.
But so you don't get into fights often. That's just twice.
No, yeah, but that wasn't even a fight. I just sat in a car and waited until they left. Have you ever been in like a fight situation?
Yes, but I also not good. This random kid, I was at a pizza spot. I was bringing my younger siblings out to the car. And this random kid came up to me, put his fist like against my face and pushed it, and then got on his bike and rode away.
So like a slow motion punch?
Yeah. So I didn't do anything about it. My older sister comes outside. She noticed that there was something going on with me. So when I told her, my older sister got in her car, and drove up and down Main Street in Bridgeport to try and find this kid. What was she going to do? She's a 20-something-year-old woman. This kid was probably like 13, 14. So that's the only fight I've ever been in. So, and it wasn't even a fight.
Yeah.
I just random kid slow punched me.
Slow-mo punch you?
Yeah. It's not, I don't tell that story often, but now all of Sanctuary knows.
Yeah.
So, thanks for asking.
Yeah, well, it was my pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Anytime. I just really wanted to know. I was curious about what was happening in your life.
Yeah.
The fights you got into.
I'm not a fighter.
I don't know. You have enough stories. You have 2 stories. So even if you were sitting in the car.
Doing nothing?
Yeah. Fighting.
I guess.
But anyways.
Yeah.
Sermon
last night. We were talking about dialoguing with God through prayer.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on just the couple of points that I made and see what you thought about them, and we talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the points you made that really stuck out to me that you're going to have to remind me of.
Sure.
It stuck out to me, but I don't remember the exact wording, but it's about authenticity leading to intimacy. Or how did you exactly phrase it?
Yeah, I said authenticity facilitates intimacy.
And I was like, dude, that is fire. As soon as you said it, wrote it down in my notes because I was like, that's really good. Because I don't think we think of like, why would authenticity facilitate intimacy? And like not just in our relationship with other people, but in our relationship with God.
Yeah.
So when you said that, I was like, dude, that's a point.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever encountered this, that just in general, people are really good at putting on faces, especially in church, you get like the Christian face of people.
Yeah.
And they could lead some wild life outside of church. And I saw this like with my friends at a young age, and I was like, I don't want to live like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it even happens with like parents, and like parents show kids that like when they leave the house, they act one way, and when they're at home, like they're completely different.
Sure.
But with kids in youth ministry, you take them on a retreat, and the face could only last like 48 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And then the face comes down, and you're like, thank you for finally being yourself.
Right.
I feel like I could have known you all year, and now I finally get to see what you're like.
Yeah. 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 No, it's true. 'Cause it's like, I think even when you think about like in the context of prayer, like you feel like anytime I talk to people and you're like, hey, like, can you pray? They're like, I don't have the right words. Or like, well, I don't pray like Kevin prays. And it's like, that's cool. I wasn't asking. If I wanted Kevin to pray, I'd ask Kevin to pray.
Yeah.
Like, I'm asking you to pray. And they're like, yeah, but I can't do that. And it's like, well, why not? And they're like, well, because it doesn't sound like beautiful, or it doesn't. And it's like, no, like what you were saying, pointing out the story of like Elisha, is like, how simple were those words? Like there was nothing beautiful. There's nothing impressive about it. Yet like God moved. And sometimes I think even like, I've seen God move in times where it's like, no, it's just me being brutally honest with the Lord. And like I've had people who have told me like, hey, it actually makes me really uncomfortable how informal you are with God. And I'm like, yeah, but if I'm talking to God like he's my best friend, like sometimes I'm in the car and I'm like, God, this is really stupid. Or like, God, I'm really upset right now. And it doesn't like, it's not anything more than that. So I don't have to be like, I don't know. I don't have to make it like this like beautiful way of telling the Lord I'm upset.
Yeah.
And I think that like in that, like there facilitates, like you said, like that intimacy, but the beauty of knowing that there's a God who can see me and like, even in my bluntness or in my meanness is like, no, I love you. And like, I want to meet you in that. So,
yeah, that's something that, we were talking about it kind of like the prayer voice. Like how when we pray, I oftentimes all of a sudden, like I change the candor of my speech, and I use like all sorts of almost like SAT words, you know?
Yeah.
And theological words that I would never use.
Right.
In my real life conversations. And so it just feels like I'm trying to put on some sort of face that I think that God would be more responsive to.
Right. Yeah, like he's impressed by our big words.
Yeah.
When he's probably like, dude, that's not you.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You sound silly. Like, you sound crazy. Yeah. And like, even when you think about like, right, I'm thinking about the scripture in Matthew when Jesus is talking about like go into the closet and like pray to your Father in heaven. And it's like, when I'm around people, like I can feel the freedom to pray however I want. But then when you're almost in front of people, like there is that like, oh, like I've got to like step it up, or like I've got to make sure like my voice sounds a specific way. And it's like, no, I just want to pray to God like he's sitting at the table with us, like he's having a meal with us, like he's just here and talking the same way we're talking. And like that challenge of doing so, because he's not, like God's not impressed, or he's not like, oh, that prayer I'll answer, but the other one, that one I won't. You know, he's like, no, like I just want you in your authentic self to be able to pray and talk to me and know like I love you and just you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was really good last night when you said that.
That's cool.
Yeah, man. So
thanks for the encouragement.
Anytime.
So what did you think of when I was talking about making space in your life to be able to hear God?
Yeah.
I don't know if you had the same struggle that I was talking about, where like I struggle to find time in my day.
Yeah.
It's not finding time. I struggle to make time in my day in general, because I'm always consuming something. There's always like another thing that I could be listening to or participating in. And so not having any sort of practice in my life to just listen.
Yeah. When you were talking about like how you always feel like you need to like be listening to something, or like I'm the same way. I'm like, I get in my car, music, and I'll listen to music all the way to work, or I'll call my mom, and like, cause I don't get to see my mom a ton. So I'll talk to her, and then it's like, well, I get to work now, I'm surrounded by people. And even when I have quiet times at work, I pop in my headphones so that I can focus or concentrate on what I'm working on. So I'm putting on music so that I can do that. And like, I can get to the end of the day, same like you, and like, oh, was I actually listening to the Lord? Was I actually like spending time with him? And like you said, it's not so much about like, oh, can I find the time to do it? But it's like, man, can I like actually practically make time? And so even the Lord convicted me from what you said. So I like to listen to music when I'm in the shower. Like even when I'm in the shower, I'm like, I'll put something on. And this morning I took my phone to the bathroom, put it on like the sink, and was like, oh, I should put some music on before I get in the shower. And I was like, why? Like, why do you need music on while you're in the shower? Like, why can't you just like in the stillness, like just take a shower and just be quiet? And it like, I didn't have this like special revelation. Angel didn't come down from heaven, but it was like, oh, this is different than what I normally do. And I think finding ways to create that space for the Lord to speak and for the Lord to move is like really important. Even like I've had to practice during my quiet times, not putting on music with lyrics and just putting on like, hey, I'm just going to put on an instrumental, and like, I will journal, and like, we'll spend time like, okay, I'm going to wait just a little bit to see like if the Lord wants to say anything, if the Lord is going to say anything, because he's always speaking, always moving. But am I actually creating that time when I'm spending time with him to actually make the time for him to speak?
Yeah.
Because it's like when you go out with friends or you go out on a date, you're not like, hey, so this is what I did today, and this is what I want. Cool. Let's get the tab and let's go. Like, you want to have a conversation with the person you're with. So there's a challenge of like, hey, if we're going to spend time with the Lord, then we have to spend time waiting for his responses, waiting for him to speak, and can't expect that it's going to take 15 seconds. Like, sometimes it might take a little bit longer, and it feels really awkward. But what if waiting a minute longer, the Lord gives you the answer that you've been waiting for, or like a response? And I think the other thing too is like, and this is thinking about this as I was prepping for us to talk today, but like, how many times do I also ask the Lord a question in the morning, but then fill up my day with stuff because I'm scared of what the Lord's going to say back?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm like, all right, Lord, I have this question. I don't actually want to hear your answer because I'm scared of what you're going to say.
Yeah.
So I walk away from the conversation completely.
I feel that. That's one of those things that I feel like you save for bedtime.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, God, I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to fall asleep.
Right. Hopefully you don't respond.
I realized when I was thinking about prayer and getting ready for just the sermon last night, and realizing that I wasn't living any sort of lifestyle that gave me the ability to hear God. Yeah. And that I was doing my most intense quiet time when I laid down to go to sleep, which I feel like when I was probably getting really into it, I'd fall asleep.
Sure. You know? Yeah.
And it was also the first time I was giving my brain even time to process stuff that wasn't prayer. Just because I finally put my phone down and finally stopped having stuff like, I don't know, pushing into my thought space.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like that'd be a healthy practice. Like you talking about the shower thing. Like I started driving in silence, which was like super difficult. Yeah. Because it feels like addictive. You're like, oh man, I'm so used to doing this. It's so habitual. Yeah. Well, but practices like that.
You almost, in the culture you live in, it feels like if you're not constantly learning, which you said yesterday, like, oh, like this is a great time for me to learn. Yeah. And it's like, but if I'm not constantly learning, if I'm not constantly trying to achieve something, then I feel like I'm failing, where it's like actually sitting in silence before the Lord might be the best 10-minute drive in. Yeah. Or like the best way to spend those 10 minutes. Yeah. But because culture and society has told us like, no, you should always be learning. You should always be like, something should always be like making you better. We fill it with so many other things instead of like, no, actually I'm going to take in, like, even if you had a quiet time in the morning. Yeah. Like I'm really like, I'll like have a quiet time in the morning. I don't think about what I read throughout the day. Yeah. I'm just like, I read this story. That was great. Worked in it fed me in the moment, but then I'm not thinking about it or like going back to like, oh Lord, what were you saying to me this morning? But if we make those spaces to be quiet before the Lord and be intentional about like, actually, I'm gonna meditate back on what I read earlier today, or like, God, you said something earlier today, and I want to spend time on that. Or God, I asked you a question earlier today. I feel like I haven't heard from you. Like, I want to make space for you to speak. It changes, I think, the way that we live. That's actually more impactful than just filling ourselves with things to fill our mind.
Yeah. And this is one of those things too, like that Martin Buber quote. I'm botching his name horribly. It's like I hit the Google little speaker button so I can hear what it sounds like. It was like Martin Buber. So whatever his name is, he's a philosopher, and his quote applies to like everything. You could just change what it's about.
Yeah.
But this is one of those things that it's not something you see the immediate results of.
Right.
But when you live a lifetime of developing this, it's like watching a tree grow, where like, if you watch it on an hourly basis, you're like, why do I even do this?
Yeah.
Because like spending that quiet time to be able to hear God's voice in the morning, and like giving time throughout the day to hear God's voice, you may not see the immediate payout in the moment, but when you live a lifetime of it and you look back over a couple of years, you're like, wow, I didn't realize how facilitating this time brought me just that much more into this intimate relationship with God than anything else that I've done.
Yeah.
More than worship, more than going to church, more than whatever. Like,
yeah. Well, I think as you were talking, I was thinking about like how many people especially our age, look at certain people in an older generation and are like, oh, I'm so inspired by them. Or like, even, I feel bad saying this, Kev, you're an older generation. He's not here. But like, look at like a Kevin and Carrie. And they're like, oh, I love the way that Kevin and Carrie pray. Like, I just want that. And it's like, well, do you realize that they've been cultivating that for years?
Yeah.
It's not just something that they stepped into and were like, oh, we're really good at this. Like, even when you talk to Kevin's like, no, that's something that took time for me to learn. Even hearing the voice of God, it's something that took time for him to learn. And I think we live in this microwave generation of like, well, I just want it now. And it's like, well, that's really cool, but that's going to take time. It's going to take time to cultivate what it looks like to spend time with the Lord. It's going to take time to cultivate what it looks like hearing from the Lord, because you don't just like, I can tell my mom's voice in a room full of people. Why? I've spent 26 years listening to my mom's voice, right? I can tell, and even knowing tones, I can tell that my mom says my name one way, she's happy. My mom says another way, she's upset. But that took years of cultivating a relationship with my mom, and like my mom knowing me, for there to be an understanding of what she's saying or how she's saying something. And it's like, well, how much more with God, where we're actually spending time like, hey, I'm reading scripture. I'm actually dialoguing with the Lord. I'm actually like, I'm talking to the Lord and I'm waiting for him to talk back. That we then cultivate a prayer life that's like, man, that's actually inspirational. And it's not like I'm in my 20s, mid to late 20s. And it's like, I can't expect when I look at older generations and like, oh man, I want to pray just like them. And it's like, okay, but they didn't just pick that up overnight. That's something that they've been doing. So what are the practices that I'm doing to actually build and develop that now? Yeah. And if I'm not doing anything, I can't expect to have the same fruit. So, and I think that's something that so often we're like, we see the fruit and we're like, I want that, but I'm not willing to do anything to grow it.
Or at the same time, we expect it to, like you said, the microwave. Like, we expect the growth to come, like, maybe some sort of, like, big jump right away and then incrementally over time.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
No, that's how I felt. It's like, man, if I do this for a couple weeks, I'm going to see this big growth all of a sudden, and then maybe it'll, like, grow slow, like everybody says. But
Yeah, no, and I just think the important thing is continuing to try. Because I can get super discouraged of like, oh, I prayed, the Lord didn't say anything, I waited, so I'm giving up. And it's like, no, but don't give up. Like, keep going, keep trying. Like, the Lord loves when we spend time with him, right? I think about something that Kevin and Carrie say is the Lord speaks to us for two main reasons: connection and direction. And it's like, sometimes I'm like, Lord, I really want to know this answer. And the Lord's like, that's really cool. I just want to connect with you though. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But I really want to, like, where's this going? What's going on next? And the Lord's like, I'll let you know. Just come spend time with me. Like, I just want to hang out with you. But we can be so like, no, Like, I need to know this. I need to get here. Like, and the Lord's like, but I just want time away with you. And it's not about the right answer. It's just about us spending time together. And through spending time together, you'll find out what's next. But just come away with me, spend time with me. And I think we're not, again, because of that microwave culture of like, well, this is what I want, so I can go out and get it, so I'm going to go out and do it. That's not how the Lord works. Oftentimes it's like, no, let's come away. Like, let's talk. Like, let's go for a walk. Like, let's slowly get somewhere, because it's so much more impactful when we're actually spending time with him than him just saying, okay, here it is. Like, I think even in those moments, we just take it for granted what the Lord's given us.
So one of the things too, like, so we know that prayer brings us into like deeper intimacy with God.
Yeah.
But one of the things I talked about last night too were these like relational blocks that we come across. And they're things that have come up in your relationship with God or with even other people that may stop you from wanting to even get together because of some sort of hurt that has happened between the two of you, or a misunderstanding, or some letdown.
Yeah.
And it could stop you from wanting to hang out. And it could also, when you're together, it makes conversation kind of weird or really hard, because you either don't want them to bring it up at all, or you're scared that they'll mention it, or if it does come up, what are either of you going to say? Yeah. And so it makes me think of I was in this relationship where my parents, they really were not a fan of this girl, and so whenever I was around them, I like tried so hard to put on like a good face. Yeah. And it was so hard because it was so awkward. Cause they knew that that we were dating. Yeah. And they were not fans at all. And so when I was like around them, I would try to put on this like really good face somehow. Like I'd like go play like worship on a guitar or something. Be like, oh, they'll think I'm in a good place. Right?
They'll think I'm holy.
Yeah, yeah. They'll be like, oh, he's okay. You know, he just has a bad girlfriend. That's all. You know? And so it was so awkward. And then when we were like around each other for dinner, I just felt like this big like faker all the time. I was like, and I was scared to let conversation flow freely. I was like, I have to control this conversation. So I'm going to do a lot of talking, because if they talk, they might bring it up, and I do not want to go there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know if you've been in that type of situation, but I've been in those types of situations with God too. Yeah. Where I'm like, all right, God, I'm going to do all the talking, and I'm going to make this quick. Yeah. Because there's this hurt in my life, and I don't want to deal with it. But, like, I feel like he's calling me to deal with it. And so these blocks get in the way, and it stops us from having that intimacy with God. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was such a powerful moment even last night, where you gave space for people to like just even sit with the Lord in the silence and like have the Lord reveal, is there something that's blocking our relationship? Because the Lord desires connection with us. He desires intimacy with us. So he's like, hey, whatever it is, like I want to get rid of that. And I think as like on our end, we almost feel that shame or that weight of like, yeah, but you like, well, no, it's there, and like I'll hold on to it, or like it makes me unworthy to like have like conversation with you. Yeah. And the Lord's like, but I want to do everything I can to get rid of that. Like, because I just want to connect with you. I just want to meet with you. And I think so often we think that the Lord is this like overpowering ruler or like judgmental parent that's like waiting to bring down the hammer, where the Lord's like, no, I have every desire to take that thing away because I just want to be with you. Yeah. And I think that can be so many things. Like I think if we're honest, like I think in my own life where I've seen it, but also where I've seen it in the lives of others, is like sexual addiction or any type of addiction, I think can be a really easy space for us to feel this shame and this guilt because we know that it's wrong. It's not like we're like, oh, I don't know, it might be, might not be. We know that it's wrong, and because of that shame and guilt, we put up a wall of like, the Lord would never want to talk with us. Like, I'm too disgusting, I'm too gross. Like, I think about the prodigal son who comes back and is probably in like pig crap and like just disgusting. Yeah. And he comes to the father, and he doesn't come to the father for connection because he's like,
I missed you and I love you. He comes back because he's like, I'm going to die out there unless I come back to your house. And the father's like, hey, let's get the finest robe. Let's get the family ring back. Like, let's put him in the finest clothing. And he's putting the finest clothing on a dirty man. It's not cleaned up. They didn't say, go take a shower first. Mm-hmm. He clothes him in righteousness, even in his dirty, gross state. Why? Because the son comes back and he's like, Father, forgive me. Like I've sinned. Right. And I think like for us, even in kind of those sinful things that we might think are holding us back from connecting with the Father, like the Lord's like, no, I just want to meet with you. I want to hang out with you. And I think through that connection, we can find healing and grace and like love, but we can't allow that addiction or that sin to be the thing that even keeps us from coming to the Father. Because I think that's all the enemy's trying to do is like, if I can keep you as far away from him as possible, then I'm doing a good job. I'm succeeding. But like we crave to be in the presence of the Lord, and the Lord craves to be with us. And we can't allow that, like that sinful nature of ours to be the very thing that keeps us away from the Father, because what he wants to do is restore and redeem us. But if we're holding him at arm's length because we're saying, I'm too dirty, I'm too gross, you don't want to touch me, then the Lord's not going to force himself on us and like, no, here. He's waiting for us to just come humbly to him and admit like, hey, I know that I have these things in my life, but Jesus, I need you. And I think the Lord, like if we're willing to do that, the Lord meets us in that.
Mm. That's super cool. I haven't thought about before the prodigal son in the way of like, he probably didn't even take off his like crusted over pig food robe. Right. Like I honestly never thought about that before. That's pretty cool.
Well, even you think about like not only is he dirty and gross, but probably sweaty from walking all of that way. Like nothing about him is like he's presentable.
Yeah.
He's cleaned himself up. He's in his best church clothes. This man was broke, poor, dirty, coming back to his family's house. Like there's so much in it of like, man, there's so much shame in like all over him. But the Father looks past all of that. Doesn't even let him finish saying what he's prepared so that he can clothe him and restore him.
Yeah.
And like, that's like, I think that's the beauty of the Father that like we get to serve is like, God's not like I think so often I can remember times where there were those like blockages in my life, and because of sin and like, I don't think the Lord wants to speak to me. And I come to the Lord and I'm like, God, I'm sorry. And like, just, I love you. Like, I get it. I love you. No matter how many times it was a coming back to the Lord of like, God, I messed up again. Okay. I love you. And I think there were certain times where the Lord was like, okay, you messed up. What are we going to do about it? But each time I was met with grace and love, because the Lord doesn't want that blockage. Mm. We're the ones who, like you said, we're the ones who build that wall up to keep him out. Mm.
What you're even saying there too is like a lot of the relational blockages that have come up between me and the Lord as well. They've been things that I've tried to like. I'm like, I could do this myself.
Yep.
Like, so even the thing about the prodigal son, like he went and worked on a farm rather than going back to the Father like right away.
Right.
He's like, I can get myself out of this situation.
Yeah.
That's been me so many times with these blockages. I'm like,
yeah,
if I just keep working at this specific thing, then I'll be fine. Kind of like thinking about the vine and the branch yesterday. Mm. It's like the branch being on their own, be like, I'm gonna grow fruit. Come on, fruit, grow.
Right.
But the branch can't grow fruit on its own because the life is coming from the sap from the vine. The sap doesn't flow from the branch; it flows from the vine.
Yeah.
And trying to produce fruit like I did when I was like, I'm going to worship in front of my parents and they'll think it's okay.
Sure.
I'm trying to force the fruit to grow.
Yeah.
And so they can see like, oh, he's okay.
Yeah.
But that real fruit's only going to come from the vine.
Yeah. Well, and even I think like seeing that in our own sin, or like the blockage of sin is us thinking, well, if I just clean it up, then I can come to the Lord. And it's like, but I can't do that in my own strength and in my own power. No matter how good I think I am, I'm not. Things still come up. Like temptation's still there. I can't do it without the Lord. So the very thing I need is connection with the Lord in order to like work through that sinful blockage. But if I'm saying to myself, I'm going to keep working at it. I'm like, I need to make sure that I'm put together and I've got everything fixed before I come to the Lord. Like, dude, I'm just creating more problems for myself because I can't fix it by myself. And that's not a bad thing. I think in the society we live in, right? It's like, well, it's your job. You fix it. But actually, like, it's in our weakness that he is strong. So if I'm actually allowing myself to be weak before the Lord to say, I can't do this on my own, then the Lord moves in that.
Yeah, like the branch's primary role is to receive the life-giving sap from the vine.
Yeah.
That's its only role.
Right.
Because the vine's going to make the fruit grow.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's no amount of effort that's going to save you from this. It's just abide in the vine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
Did you have something you wanted to say over there? You were looking like you were prepping for a
Yeah, you're grabbing the mic. Just so you guys know, Zach has a mic.
I do have a mic.
Did you want to say something?
He's willing to use it.
I can. If you'd like me to.
I would love for you to.
Go for it.
Yeah, I was pulling up notes. We had, as a staff, we had this guy, Rob Reamer, come, and you guys, got both you guys taking a sip of coffee. This is great.
At the same time.
And he talked about soul care. He talked about some spiritual authority stuff. And two things that he said that stood out to me were, he said that the greatest things keeping you from intimacy with God are your soul issues, and those are usually wrapped and tied up in shame. And then he defined shame as this. He defined shame as merely pride wrapped in self-disgust. It's making life too much about you. Because when we feel shame because of things that we've done, like we all do things that we should feel shameful for doing. Yeah. Right? Like we've all done it. We lie, we cheat, we whatever. And we should feel shame. It's actually a good thing that we feel bad about doing those things. However, like, I guess you call that guilt. But shame is when you make it all about you and say, I need to clean myself up, or I can't come before God and receive that forgiveness. And so then you defer, you deflect, you do something else, you make yourself busy, and you never actually bring that up from the Lord, kind of like those blocks that we talk about. And it's oftentimes our shame is our response to the guilt we feel, and it's not actually submitting to the Lord and saying, I can't fix this part of me. Like, nothing I do will, like, I can do some things that will help, like, I can be smart, but I can't fix this thing. So, yeah, I don't know, just something that he shared that really stuck with me. And oftentimes we look at our shame and we say, oh, who am I? I'm a wretch, whatever, but we need to then ask the question, who are you? And look to who God is in that moment, know that he is our, Jehovah Jireh. He is our God who provides. He is our, so that's what I was thinking.
No, that's good. Yeah. I think there is the moment to look at ourselves and be like, man, I'm guilty, or I feel shame, but then pointing ourselves back to who God is and like, but what he craves is us, and he like wants to pour out his grace and pour out his love, but we have to receive that. So that's good, Zach. Russ, I think for me, even you shared kind of about your parents. I think even sharing, because for me, right, I think there is sin, but I think there's also a point in my life where I was actually really disappointed with God. And I stopped coming to God because I was just like, I'm actually disappointed by something you've done, so I don't want to come to you. And that took almost about 6 months of me. I had this blockage of like, God, I'm actually really disappointed. And I feel really hurt because I thought that you were doing something like this one thing, and it felt like you took every dream I had and just like put it through the shredder. And like, that was a huge blockage for me because I had dreamed of all of this stuff, and felt like the Lord had taken it away. And I was like, why would I come to you if that's what you're going to do? And for a really long time, for that, like about six months to a year period, like I had even gotten to a point with the Lord where I was like, I don't want to dream with you anymore. Like, I don't want to ask you for stuff anymore, because why would I ask you for something if you're just going to take it away? And I think one Sunday, Kevin was actually preaching, and he had said, like, hey, know that even in your disappointment of the Lord, like the Lord still loves you and he has better things for you. Something like that. And I remember sitting there and being like, oh, again, it's a problem I have. It's not that the Lord isn't good. It's because I thought my life was going to look one way, and it doesn't. And the Lord's not holding something over, or like, oh, ha ha ha, this could have been yours, but it's not. Like, the Lord was actually like, no, I have good things. It just doesn't look the way that you thought it would. And like that took me on a journey of like, okay, how do I then surrender the dreams that I had, or the hurts and the pains that I have, to really recognize like who you are, God, and like your goodness and your grace in my life and your love for me. And the fact that like even I forget where in scripture it is, but like it says, if you then, who are human, can give your kids good gifts, like how much more does a father want to give to you? And it was just a complete relearning of who God was. But because I was hurt, not because the Lord did something bad. The Lord actually did something really good. But I was hurt by what he did in the moment, and got so caught up in my own pain that I didn't even recognize, like, no, actually what the Lord was doing was a good thing. And I think for me, like, that was a really big block of in my relationship with the Lord for a while, because I just felt so hurt. But I was so focused on me and not him that like it affected our relationship for a long time.
You just reminded me of something one of my coworkers said a couple years ago. Sorry for clearing my throat right into the mic. It has to do with fruit trees, actually. I'm stuck on the fruit trees. I'm sorry.
I mean, it works.
But he got a apple tree from his neighbor as a gift. And so his apple tree grew, and his neighbor had the same exact apple tree.
Yeah.
And his apple tree actually started making apples, and he was really pumped about it.
Yeah.
And over a couple of years, his apples were getting smaller and smaller, and his tree was getting bigger and bigger, and his neighbor's tree was just growing these giant apples. And so he went over to his neighbor. He's like, what's wrong with my apple tree? Yeah. And his neighbor's like, you got to prune it. And he's like, I am pruning it. And his neighbor says, you're not pruning it nearly enough. You got to really hack that thing up. And he couldn't do it. Yeah. Because his tree was actually bearing fruit. And he's like, why would I prune these fruit-bearing branches? Yeah. Because I actually can do something with this fruit. Right. And he couldn't deal with the pain of having to clip away a bunch of these fruit-bearing branches. That's good. But if he did, he would have these super huge, awesome apples. Right. And the tree would actually be healthier for it, and the apples would be way better. Yeah. But I think that also like applies to our life, where it's like if we see our life going a certain way and it has some good stuff in it, right? And it feels like God prunes those things away, and it's like, hey, God, like the disappointment could really come because it's hard to understand how this thing that was fruitful could be taken away. Yeah. But did it play out like that for you? Like, has it come that full circle where you've seen how like the pruning ended up with you having that like larger fruit in the end? Or how did this end up? Yeah.
Relax, Zachary. No, totally. I think initially it, like you said, like it was that like, hey, this really hurts. And like, I think about that passage in John 15 where it even says like, he takes away the branches that bear no fruit, and he prunes the branches that bear fruit. And like in that process of the Lord taking those things away, like it hurt. Like that wasn't easy. I mean, to get to a point with the Lord where you're like, I don't even want to dream anymore. Like that was a really scary point for me. Like people would ask me like, oh, what are you dreaming about in the next 5 years? And I'd be like, I don't know. I'm just living. Like whatever happens. I just don't care. and to allow the Lord in a season of like realizing, hey, you're the one that's disappointed by something that is actually like, this is for your good. And like allowing the Lord to heal that piece of me and like restore me to who I was before, and even better than I was before. Like I then began to say like, oh God, I can dream again. Like, God, now I can look 5-10 years in the future and see like, man, these are things that I want. And like, what's really cool is like, yeah, like the Lord is redeeming that, but like that took time for the Lord to do that with me on my own, one-on-one. Like that took time with pastors, that took time going to therapy, that took time like one-on-one with the Lord to work through those things, those pains, to then finally be in a place of like, oh Lord, I actually see some of what you were doing. And it was really for my benefit. It was for my good, even if it sucked and it hurt. Even if there were moments where I was like, I don't see the point of this. Like, why would you do this? Like years later, I can look back and like, oh yeah, that was necessary and needed for my personal growth in my relationship with the Lord. So I think for people who even feel like, well, I don't know, like I've been asking the Lord for something for a while and he hasn't given it to me and I'm disappointed. Or for people who are like, yeah, God took something from me. It's really wrestling with like, but why did he do that? And you're not going to know. It was in that season of my life of even like getting healing. It wasn't like the Lord was like, oh, I'm doing this so that, your future could be better. And so that the Lord, it was about connection. It was about the Lord saying, I just want to be with you. I want you to know that like, I love you deeply. Like it wasn't about, Andres, I want to show you where you're going to be in 10 years. It was, Andres, I love you. And I need you to see that I love you. And I think, again, we can be so focused on destination that we miss out on the connection part. Even in our healing of like, well, I just want to be healed. And the Lord's like, I want you to be healed too. But I want to spend time with you as you go through that process. And I want you to grow with me, not just on your own. So it is really cool. I think years later, I can look back and see like, oh, I see what the Lord is doing. And like, I think there's still things that I'm like, I don't know if I fully know that whole picture. But as I continue to grow and continue to go on, like I can see as the Lord has helped me remove those blockages in my life or helped me remove that specific wall in my life, like I see more of who he is, and in turn I'm able to learn more about who he's created me to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say about intimacy and intimacy with the Lord in particular?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is like, again, like if you think about it like a relationship, like you don't go on a first date and know like, oh yeah, this is the person I want to marry. Some of you might think that.
Some people do.
That's a little wild. But I think the more that you spend time, the more that you get to know and intentionally get to know, not just you talking all the time, not just you like, oh, well, the Lord and I are just, it's a one-way conversation, but like the more that you spend time getting to know who Jesus is, getting to know the Father, like the more intimate that relation gets. And I think for guys, that sounds weird because you're like, intimacy with God, like intimacy with the Father. That sounds weird, but it's like, but we need it. Like we need to spend time with God. We need to spend time listening to him, hearing him, seeing what he has, not just for us, but for the people around us. But we won't know that unless we're actually spending time with him. And that's a freebie for anybody in a relationship, right? Like if you want to get to know the person you're with, ask them questions and wait for them to respond. Spend time with them, listen to them. What do they want? What do they need? Where are they going? And you partner with that as you go on. And I think it works the same way in a relationship with God. Like spend time with him. What does God want? Like in my quiet times with the Lord, is sometimes like, God, what do you want to do today? Because I can sit down and like, God, this is what I want to do today. But if I'm like, hey, Lord, what do you want to do today? How can I partner with that? God, what are you doing in the next 5 years? in my life? How can I partner with that? Because I want to do what the Lord's doing. I don't want to just do what I'm doing, you know? So I would just encourage anyone who's like, well, what does that look like? How do I do that? Like, how do I sit down and like intentionally spend time with the Lord? Write whatever your thoughts are. And a practice that Kevin does that I've picked up is writing a question in like black pen. So something as simple as like, God, what do you want to do today? And just sitting and waiting, and like, it's not anything crazy. The Lord oftentimes for me doesn't come in like a booming voice. Oftentimes sounds like my own voice in my own head. And as I get something, if I feel like, I'm hearing something that's maybe not like me, or I just start to write it down in a red pen so that there's a difference between the black and the red. And I reflect on it, and like throughout the day, like, okay, this is what the Lord said he wanted to do today. How can I partner with that in everything that I do? And that's a really simple practice that you can take on to like really grow that.
So something you said too about just spending time with God to like grow your intimacy and stuff. I think that can be really hard for guys to do. Like if we want to connect with God, and talking just for the point of growing in friendship or relationship can be really difficult.
Sure.
I feel like guys, this is like really stereotypical, but it's also in my life anecdotally true, is connecting with other guys. I feel like I need to like just do something.
Sure.
We just do something together.
Sure.
Growing up in church, it was always like, this guy's my friend. Oh, why are you guys friends? Oh, because we put the chairs away together. That's how we know each other. He's my chair guy, right? And so what if you could give advice to guys is like something you can do with God to spend time with him that's not hiking, because that always seems to be the solution.
This seems like the solution for men.
Is like, hey, go on a hike with God. It's like, I'm tired of people telling me to go on a hike. Right? Yeah, but I just want to know, like, what's something practical I could go do with God to grow in intimacy? Yeah,
I mean, I'm a very relational person. So how I spend time with the Lord is probably oftentimes like I go to a coffee shop, and like we'll like sit at a table, and we'll journal just about like what happened this week, or what was going on kind of in the morning, what's going on in my head oftentimes. And then I spend that time like, God, where are you in the midst of this? And writing down that question. And I think just because I connect relationally so well with people, that's oftentimes how I relate to the Lord. And I think for any human, it's asking yourself, like, how do I relate to people? Because you totally can. I know Paul, our middle school director, would say like, man, I love going to the gym because I get some of my like best conversations with the Lord there. Or like thinking through, like when he's thinking through like sermon series and stuff, he's like, that's like where I feel most inspired by the Lord. Why? Because he's doing something he enjoys with the Lord. So I think for me, I love going out to coffee with people. I love doing that. So I love doing that with the Lord, and like seeing it as an activity that I get to do with him. So I think like we don't have to make everything like crazy spiritual, or like, I'm going to go out on a date with the Lord. But like really, like, what do I enjoy doing? And how do I invite the Lord into that? If you enjoy going to the batting cages, go to the batting cages. Talk to the Lord while you're doing it. If you enjoy golfing, go golfing with Jesus. Don't go with people. Like, spend some one-on-one time. And as you're doing that activity, just asking the Lord questions, and like sitting and waiting. If you're golfing, I guess standing. But like engaging with the Lord the same way you would engage with a friend who you're going out to hang out with. Like, do the same thing. Just, it's you and the Lord. And like, is that awkward? Sure. People might be like, why are they by themselves? Like, whatever, that's fine. But like, I think just finding an activity that you enjoy doing, and inviting the Lord into that, because the Lord delights in spending time with us. So him being invited to come do something with us, he's like, awesome, let's go do it together. So that's my recommendation.
Awesome. It looks like Zach had something too. Zach, did you have something?
No, he just moved the mic. I got excited. I thought he was going to say something.
I thought he was going to, because he's bringing this manly perspective that neither one of us can bring.
No, zero. Well, Zach goes on hikes. That's the problem.
And I think he also probably does some other manly things that like neither one of us participate in.
Fishes. What else? Fishing. Oh, yeah, fishing. I said fishes.
Fishes. I love going fishes.
Rough.
All right, Andres.
Yes.
This has been a tremendous conversation. I feel like it's a super success. Thank you for reflecting on
man.
abiding in Christ by dialoguing with God through prayer.
Right.
But I feel like we should also end this with just something fun.
Ooh. What?
That's as far as I got.
Oh, that's. I don't have fun. I'm not your like original like youth pastor. I don't have like, oh, we can do this fun thing.
All right. Well, what's your best one? What do you have?
I don't have anything.
You don't have a single question that would be like fun for someone to find out about you.
Okay. Oh, to find out about me?
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Oh, why would I? I don't want to come up with a question for people to find stuff about me. So
ask me first, and I'll ask you the same thing.
Okay. All right. Well, think of your own question.
Okay.
So I just asked the interns this. We were out at lunch. I said, what is one thing in your childhood bedroom that you would be embarrassed for someone to find?
Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on the podcast.
Oh, okay. So maybe we don't.
Yeah, well, next question.
Next question. I'll tell you mine because I didn't get to say it at the intern table.
Okay. So you want me to ask you? Should we cut that and add this one? You want me to ask you it? Should we cut that or just keep it?
Yeah, we'll cut it, sure.
Okay. All right.
You want me to tell you what it was?
Yeah.
It was I accidentally pooped in my pants, and I hid the poopy pants in my room. And one day I came home from school. My mom had found it. She decided to do something nice for me and clean my room. And it was in my room for way longer than you'd think. That's why that's my answer.
That's disgusting.
It was disgusting. Yeah,
that's not as bad as I thought it was. Boy. I feel like we could keep that in, but
keep that in. Oh man,
good. Yeah, that wasn't as bad as I thought.
All right,
mine is just more embarrassing. Right, but when I was in middle school, I definitely had pictures of like Ashley Tisdale, like from like J14, which was like a magazine for like teenagers. But
what's the J stand for?
Just 14.
Just 14.
Yeah, but like I was in love with like Miley Cyrus, Ashley Tisdale, and like I would like kiss them before I went to sleep.
Were they posters?
Yeah, they were posters.
Like, did you take them off the wall, or like were they at standing height? So
no, they were at standing height, so I could kiss them goodnight before I went to bed. So yeah, really embarrassing. Also, I had a Winnie the Pooh comforter set until like 6th grade.
Like that you actively used?
Well, yeah, because it was my comforter set. Not by my choice, but we never got rid of it. So
that's great.
Yeah. So
that's really great.
6th grade, me in Winnie the Pooh comforter set, waking up, kissing them good morning, you know? So.
I have so many questions, but we don't have time.
No time. I'm glad we ended like that.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited to go throughout this kind of sermon series and get to talk more as we talk through the different kind of circles.
We're doing this again?
Hopefully.
All right. We'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.
See ya.